So, you want to learn how to speak Japanese, right? And maybe you want to learn it fast because, after all, it is pretty intimidating for English speakers to know that they say that it takes 2,200 hours to learn Japanese. That's a long time. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend 2,200 hours waiting to be able to have a conversation in Japanese. I want to be able to speak it right now. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Today I'm going to be giving you 7 steps to learn Japanese fast. 勉強して始めましょう。So what do I mean by learning Japanese fast? Well, it depends on your language learning experience. It depends on what your native language is. It depends on how much time you're willing to put into it, among other factors. But when I say learn Japanese fast, I mean in about 3 months you should be able to have a conversation in Japanese. The level of that conversation will again vary based on how you've taken the time to study, but you shouldn't have to wait 2,200 hours to have your first conversation in Japanese. Step number 1, find your passion for learning the Japanese language. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you here. Are you actually passionate about learning Japanese? Do you really want it? Because if you do, you should have a why. Without that why, you're gonna lose motivation, because if you don't have a reason for why you want to learn Japanese, when it gets tough to learn the language, you are going to have a hard time staying with it. So for me, I love learning the Japanese language because I love the culture. I love watching Japanese dramas, and I want to be able to speak it with people, and I want to go over to Japan and not be a tourist. I want to be able to enjoy it, right? Having a why is important no matter what you're doing, really. Whether your goal is to learn Japanese or Spanish, or even if it's a totally unrelated goal like wanting to lose weight and get fit, you need to know your why to reach your goal. Now, what does it mean to have your why, right? Your why is any reason that you have that will keep you motivated to speak the language and learn it when the going gets tough. For instance, you may want to learn Japanese because you have family members who speak it. You may want to learn Japanese because you plan on studying abroad. You may want to learn Japanese because you love anime and video games. Whatever your reason is, make sure you write it down. Put that everywhere. If you want to remember your why, put it on your phone. Maybe you love Japanese food and your goal one day is to go to Japan and eat real ramen. It's one of my goals. Take a picture of a bowl of ramen and put it as your background on your phone. Put it on your vision board. Put it on your desk next to your computer. I'm serious. Take that bowl of ramen and use that as your inspiration. Step number 2, immerse yourself in the Japanese language at home. Create a little Tokyo where you live. You may think that you need to travel to Japan to really immerse yourself in the language, but I can tell you for a fact that that's not true, because I've actually never been to Japan, and I've been studying the language and I can speak the language. The biggest thing that you have to do, though, is you have to make sure that you are surrounded by the language. So here are some ways that you can do that at home. You can turn your smartphone to the Japanese language. You can change your default language setting on your phone, and this will change all of your apps to Japanese as well. It's really good for picking up on different everyday things that you might need to know, even like little Facebook emojis. Like when you click on the Facebook reactions, it'll tell you in Japanese what those things are, and you'll learn and pick up some phrases naturally that way. You can do the same thing with your computer. You can also start watching Japanese TV shows, listening to Japanese music, reading Japanese books and manga. Whatever it is that you like that is a native resource, use it. Use it all the time. And if you're a beginner, that may be too hard for you to just like jump in, without subtitles or anything, right? That's okay. Take it slow. If you need to watch it with subtitles first, do that, but make sure you're really actively listening for phrases and words that repeat all the time, so that way you can start building up to understanding more and working on watching things or reading things without the help. Step number 3, find that language exchange partner. Another thing you can do is look for a language exchange partner in your area. I did this by finding the Japanese Saturday school at my college that I went to. So at the college I graduated from, they have a Japanese Saturday school where everyone in the area I live goes there to continue their education that they would be doing in Japan. This makes it a really great place to meet new people who might want to learn better English or just want a friend. That's been a huge success for me, and you may not be able to find that, but it is worth looking into. And even if you can't find that kind of pocket of Japanese people in your area, then I suggest looking online for a language exchange partner. One of the best resources that we use is iTalki, and if you would like to check that out, the link is in the description below. iTalki just makes it easy for you to find a language exchange partner. These language exchange partners are free, or you can sign up to have a tutor who is more able to teach you the Japanese language, which is really good for beginners. But whichever way you go, it is a really great option to start speaking the language and getting that practice in, because without speaking it, you really will not learn Japanese fast. When I was in college, I took Japanese for 4 years, and I could understand it pretty well. I was almost at an N3 level, but I wasn't speaking it. So when it came to really understanding native Japanese and speaking it and saying it back to people, I couldn't do it. And it's because I wasn't practicing speaking. So if there's nothing else that you do, you need to make sure that you practice speaking. And obviously that's the whole point of Fluent in 3 months. That is our number one way we encourage people to learn, and that's because it works. So make sure that you find that language exchange partner, whether it's through iTalki or in person. Or even if you find like a Facebook community, or you search on Instagram using Japanese hashtags. For instance, I've been using Instagram hashtags to connect with other people in Japanese on Instagram and get that practice. It's not speaking practice, but it is still practice. I practice writing and I practice reading that way and connecting with real Japanese people, right? So for instance, recently I used the hashtag yoga in Japanese, and that's because I was posting about something related to yoga, and I happened to also translate it into Japanese in my caption. That's something that I've been doing lately to kind of work on my own Japanese goals this year, which is to reach an N1 level of fluency. So anyway, I will put the caption yoga, and I got several Japanese people who commented on it, and I replied back in Japanese, and that was great practice. And now I can follow those people, or I can just click the hashtags and search and see what other people are doing on Instagram. Not only is that exposing me to the culture, but it's also exposing me to the language, and I'm getting lots of reading practice in, and I can comment back for that practice. And this can be a really good step too if you're too nervous and too shy to start speaking with a stranger on something like iTalki right off the bat. Practicing on Instagram like that, you have a little bit of a barrier there, right? You're not having to show your face to a stranger and start talking a language that you don't feel comfortable in. So by doing that, you get the time to think through your answer, and you can practice online and see how they respond to you. You know, maybe they correct you, or maybe they are like, wow, great job. That gives you the help you need to push you to that next step. But no matter what, you need to find someone to talk to. And you need to practice Japanese as much as possible. Speak it every day, even if it's to yourself, it's to your dog or your cat, it's to your kids, to your husband, whether they understand or not, speak it. Step number 4, use language hacks to help you speed up the process of learning Japanese. So Benny Lewis, the founder of Fluent in 3 months, he has his whole method of language hacking. And language hacking can be applied to Japanese as well, which is so helpful. It's just tiny little hacks that you do to make your language learning more efficient. For instance, you can use the 80-20 rule of learning the 20% vocabulary that will get you 80% of the results. If you just spend your time reading vocabulary lists from anywhere under the sun, it's not tailored to you. So let's say that you're really interested in yoga. We'll go back to my Instagram example. I really like yoga. If I wanted to talk about yoga, well, I'm not going to necessarily learn that from a textbook, right? So you need to make sure that you are learning vocabulary related to the topics you want to talk about. Because if I want to go to a yoga class when I get to Japan, I need to be able to understand the cues to follow along with that yoga class. If I want to talk to somebody about yoga, I need to understand how to talk about, a yoga flow, the postures, your body alignment. Those are the type of words that I might want to look up and tailor to me. Those are the 20% that will get me the 80% results when I go to speak or I go to take a yoga class. A couple other things that Benny does for language hacking is things like using Anki, which is a spaced repetition system. I use Anki as well to practice Japanese kanji and vocabulary. And what that does is it's an algorithm that helps you remember the words as you're about to forget them. Another technique that Benny uses is the Pomodoro technique. That's where you work in short blocks of time and then take a very short break. For instance, you work for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. I personally like to get into deep work and work longer than that, and another method of doing that is to work for 45 minutes and then take a 15-minute break, or work for an hour and a half and then take a 30-minute break. Whatever works best for you, everyone's different. Find that sweet spot and make sure that you're taking little breaks to give your mind a rest. For me, sometimes if I feel unmotivated, my language hack is to tell myself just 15 minutes. Just 15 minutes. If 15 minutes is all I'm able to do, that doesn't seem so intimidating, right? You just tell yourself, okay, 15 minutes. And once you get into it, you'll probably want to do more, and that's awesome. Lastly, one of our other language hacking techniques that we use is accountability, and that's super important. Again, it goes back to speaking. You know, when you have that language exchange partner who holds you accountable and you need to prepare for that language exchange, it keeps you motivated and more likely to follow through on your studies, right? One thing that we have at Fluent in 3 months is we have the Fluent in 3 month challenge. The challenge helps you to have that accountability group of other language learners all striving to meet the same goal of a 15-minute conversation in 90 days. And during the challenge, you get different mini challenges and assignments that help you stay on top of it and kind of help you highlight your weak spots too. So you may realize that, you don't know all of the core 100 Japanese words to help you really start speaking. So you go back and you review that. The Fluent in 3 month challenge is what helped me get from not speaking to speaking very well and having full-blown hour-long conversations with my language exchange partner. So I cannot recommend it enough. Step number 5, use conversation connectors and fillers to help you sound more natural and give you a little bit of extra thinking time. So what are conversation connectors and fillers? A lot of times in English, it's things like and things that kind of draw out the conversation. It can also be things like because, also, at that time, different things that kind of transition from one sentence to the other. In Japanese, those types of words are nanika, nande, and also connector words like dakara, soshite, korekara. Those types of words help you connect from one sentence to the other, and it just makes it sound more natural and flow better, and it doesn't take much to learn them either. Number 6, focus on the easy parts of Japanese first. You may think that Japanese is hard, but the honest truth is, it's really easier than you think. For instance, you probably already know some Japanese words like karaoke, tsunami, konnichiwa. Japanese has tons of loan words that help make it easy. Also, Japanese has no gendered words. That makes it so easy. You don't have to worry about conjugating the verb for the gender or matching this and that like you do in like Spanish and other languages. There is none of that. That makes it so easy to learn. Step number 7, and our last step. Make sure that you learn the kana and kanji. Do not avoid them. The best Japanese resources are going to be written in at the very least kana, and you really need to learn them. It's not that hard. I know it seems intimidating when you look at it and it's like, there's so many writing systems, but it's really not that bad. In fact, I have a whole video on how to learn the kana and the Japanese alphabet, so make sure to check that video out because it's super helpful. But if all you do is you learn the kana and about 100 basic kanji, that will help you so much to just read and speak the language and pick up native resources easy. Alright guys, so that is how you learn Japanese fast. Really, it's all just about making sure that you're effective in your language learning, you're speaking, you're using native resources, and most importantly, you're having fun with it. Because it's not fun to just sit and stare at a textbook all day. Find why you love Japanese and do those things. As you heard me talk about, I've learned Japanese around topics that I love, yoga, fitness, everything that I love. So do the same thing and you will grow leaps and bounds and you will learn to love the process. As always, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep getting awesome Japanese content plus other language learning content. And if you want to read more about the tips that I shared today, the rest of the article is in the description box below, as well as all the resources that I mentioned in this video, such as the Fluent in 3 month challenge and iTalki. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Mata ne! Ja ne!